Hello.
Mm.
Aloha. Good afternoon. Good evening. Mm, Good morning.
Good to see you. And also remember to check in on the next page or the next page if you want to say hello to everyone there. Mm.
Well, I hope everyone is doing well. I'm looking forward to sitting together for a little while. Mm. So, yeah, as usual, finding a seated posture that feels relatively comfortable, stable. Letting the eyes come to close and just seeing as best we can what is being carried on this current of mind, body, sensory experience as we let some of the stimulation go from the world around us. Visually, in terms of responsibility, we still receive sounds from the space around us. Feel physical realities of temperature, moisture, wind, all of the sensitivity that we might have on the skin. To the space around us. And of course, the heart mind is aware of the world beyond our bodies, beyond the rooms we're in. So, whatever quality of seclusion that we may experience or invite, we recognize that it is fragile, not intended to shut off the world, but rather honor all that is happening in the interior realms. Its sensitivity to the world inside and out. honesty, of that vulnerability, giving ourselves time to honor that, care for that sensitivity, and learn from it, hone it, develop it as a strength and a guide. And so we are aware of all of the physical sensations that may feel more internal, less directly exposed to the world around us. Throughout the body, it's a range of all kinds of experiences, some clear, some unclear, some easy to be named, others harder to identify. Giving a sense of dimensionality to the body, space, density, movement, fluidity, pressure, release, all of the ways the physical reality of our lives can present itself. Some pleasant, some unpleasant, perhaps some more neutral. Always moving, always changing. Trusting that the mind can go deeper than its habitual naming and framing, identifying these experiences. They can become less familiar the closer we see them. More mysterious, the more honest the viewing is. And the body not confined to the notions. We tend to put on it, enforce, and judge it by. The mind, heart can receive the body on its own terms. Amorphous, fluid, changing. not needing to make anything happen, adjust, or manipulate. Just receiving, building a relationship as best we can of interest, kindness, honesty, carefulness. Of course, other sensory experiences will arise. Can we receive them in the same way? Visual, impression, sounds, allowing them to be unfamiliar, unknown, fresh, new, coming to birth and passing away. The mind itself made of thoughts, emotions, images, flashes of cognition, when it arises, can we try to see it in the same way? New, unknown, with interest and kindness, patience. Sometimes for a few moments we can. And trusting that we can come back into this receptive experience of the body, the birth, life, and death of each moment of experience arising and passing out of our control. But the closer we see, the more honestly we see, with caring and careful heart, the closer we come to the truth of things. Moment by moment, bringing ourselves back into relationship with all that's unfolding. careful, kind, uncontrolling, unattached, receiving life, letting it go.
Mm. Thank you, Jesse, for the instructions. Mm. The theme of today's talk is about how all beings are so unbelievably related and the implications of that. The Buddha taught that in relationship to all beings, that we have all been mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, grandparents, great grandparents, daughters, sons, cousins. It's just like with all beings. So that's like a ant, unseen beings, right? Human beings, devas, like angels. It's like we're related to all beings, and all beings are related in that way. And that we've already been all of those relationships many times. I don't think we ever can contemplate that enough in terms of our relationships with all beings. The Buddha also taught there are two kinds of rare and precious human beings, one who shows kindness to other beings, and one who appreciates kindness being shown to them. Rare and precious. And of course, these two teachings are wonderfully related as well. This capacity for us to be kind to all our relatives. Yeah, we're all our relatives. Or to appreciate the kindness shown to us by all our relatives. So that's the theme that we'll weave in and out. I was born in 1951. There were two great hurricanes that hit Massachusetts, 1954, 1955. My family didn't really ever have company, but, or much, hardly at all. And in the hurricane of 54, our basement was filled with all of our neighbors. And I don't remember the details at all. But I do remember that that was very significant, that everyone was in our basement that I had ever met or seen. Um, and it was just one of those horrendous hurricanes, the sounds of it. And it happened twice in 54 and 55. So I'm not sure which hurricane this was, but my guess would be the second one, 55, because I think that as an introvert, I probably was going crazy, like with all these people in the house. But all I remember is that I begged and begged and begged my dad to let me outside when the eye of the hurricane happened. And in 54, I was not allowed to do that, or I don't remember. But in 55, I think it was the second hurricane. I think my father must have realized I was way over the edge and he let me out, which I remember all of the other adults were mad at my dad for I could overhear them yelling at him as he opened the door and let me out. And I remember all the other kids, I could hear it all, like they were begging to be let out, but the door shut, like nobody else was let out. And I got out and For those of you who know the sound, just the sound of the wind in a hurricane, it sounds mad, right? It sounds angry. It's so intense. We just had a hurricane recently here where I live, and it wasn't that bad, but there's a certain moment where the wind is so strong, it shifts to sounding angry. And like these hurricanes, 54, 55, were very intense. So I remember going down the street all by myself. Nobody, no humans were around. It was completely quiet. And it was so peaceful and so mysterious to me, that my dad told me I had to come back quickly, like I couldn't stay out long. But I just was so grateful that my dad let me out, number one. And number two, that I didn't understand even what the eye of a hurricane meant at that age, but that I knew um, it had big impact on me. Just that shift from that danger, the danger of that storm, and then to come into the middle of it, just like in the practice, the Vipassana, the practice of the equanimity, the being in the middle of things with great peace. Yeah, that's just amazing. We're born into this human body with six sense doors, and we talk about moment to moment sixth sense door awareness, that the practice of being with a moment to moment sixth sense door awareness. Um, and it's very important to uh, not underestimate really the practice of being with hearing, or being with smelling, or tasting, or the body sensations, or thought, or emotion. And what we're not taught when we're children or even adults is that what is happening moment to moment is information. It's information, different information at different sense doors. But the practice of this meditation that we do, the Vipassana, is a teaching where we're meant to discern it, and not take the discernment that happened a moment ago for granted. We're discerning, we're discerning, we're discerning. So it's not just when a thought appears. The teaching is that um, we're not meant to have a knee-jerk reaction of believing the thought or believing another person's thought, right? It's all conditioned, right? Or if a sound happens, believing the thought about the sound. Or if a body sensation happens, believing the thought about that body sensation. This goes on and on. The smell, the touch, moment to moment. It's the question of the practice when the possibility of exploration or investigation happens. It's really the freedom is the freedom from being caught in a knee-jerk reaction. The initial part of investigation is just the freedom from believing past memories about a thought, a sound, a smell, a taste, a touch, an emotion. This is from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Keep very quiet and watch what comes to the surface of the mind. Reject the known. Welcome the so far unknown and reject that in its turn. Thus you come to a place in which there is no knowledge, only being, in which being itself is knowledge. To know by being is direct knowledge. Mm. I think we should all read that every day. It's so important. It's that important. It's this reliance that we have on what's so undependable and not real. And so also when we contemplate sixth sense door, moment to moment awareness, that translation of door, information, the information, and what Nisargadatta is saying, the information is not based on a thought about anything, right? It's based on the direct experience of texture and vibration of sound, for example, or body sensations. And so that sense of um, developing just enough stillness, just enough concentration, not too much to get absorbed in what's happening and not being able to see it clearly, but enough concentration to be able to really, really receive, as Jesse was explaining in the instruction, to have that receptive attention that can receive sound, just as sound, not going through the thought process. And so the example of thought, I think, is so important in this context of the six sense doors, because mostly thought will seem like a kind of endless chatter. It's kind of a theater of our own identity. We're rehearsing what comes from before, and that's the identity. And some thoughts are helpful. And the ability to actually discern that is everything. Everything. Like the thought, mindfulness is the intention to understand rather than to judge or experience. Now, I feel like if that arises in my mind, I discern that as wisdom. Yeah. So that's the example. And so this requires this extraordinary humility, just extraordinary humility. It is like being in the eye of the hurricane. That direct knowledge of being itself. So we're not trying to get rid of what's happening or pin it down or to get it all based on the past. Uh, this is from a plant researcher at the University of Western Australia, a woman called, last name is Gagliano. Gagliano spoke at Dartmouth College in early 2020 about humbling ourselves as humans. We are the new kids on the block. Traditionally, we should pay respect to our elders, by which I mean bacteria, fungi, and plants. Our elders, bacteria, fungi, and plants. She called the view of humanity at the top of an evolutionary chain arrogant and juvenile. So we include in the relatives, we include the bacteria, right? Plants, trees. as relatives. And we think of ourselves, hopefully, in terms of evolution as the new kids on the block, which would mean, again, some kind of major shift in the kind of predominant culture, right, of how we are taught to approach life. Hmm. Maya Angelou, who most know of as a great African American writer of America, she was interviewed by George Plimpton in 1990, and it was in the Paris Review. And she was asked by George Plimpton, "Aren't the extraordinary events of your life very hard for the rest of us to identify with?" And she said, "Oh my God, I've lived a very simple life. You can say, oh yes, at 13 this happened to me, and at 14, but those are facts. But the facts can obscure the truth, what it really felt like. Every human being has paid the earth to grow up. Most people don't grow up. It's too damn difficult. What happens is most people get older. That's the truth of it. They honor their credit cards. They find parking spaces. They marry. They have the nerve to have children, but they don't grow up. Not really. They get older. But to grow up costs the earth. The earth. It means take responsibility for the time you take up, for the space you occupy. It's serious business. And you find out what it costs us to love and to lose, to dare and to fail, or maybe even more to succeed, what it costs in truth. Not superficial costs. Anybody can have that. I mean in truth. That's why I write what it really is like. I'm just trying to tell a very simple story. When I first read Nisargadatta Maharaj, one of the things I read, it was 1978 in the book I Am That, he said that all consciousness is sharing. And if we think of the mind door, the sixth sense door, moment to moment awareness, right? And the mind door, the heart center. Again, doors are holes, right? Consciousness, chitta, knowing. All consciousness is sharing. All knowing is sharing. And I was so moved by that. I didn't understand it as I understand it now, but it makes so much sense on so many levels. So if you take the level of that we all have been, right? Mother, father, daughter, son, grandparents, grandkids, all of that. But there's the level which U Pandita really stressed on the very precise level of moment to moment experience where what is consciousness, right? What is knowing? And so what is knowing? Well, striker, receptor, ignition. And if you learn how to understand striker, receptor, ignition with one sense door, you can understand it with all sense doors. So often the easiest, but not for everybody, but if we took hearing, striker would be the sound, right? In one moment, the sound. The receptor is the door, the ear door. And ignition is knowing, hearing consciousness here, right? So it takes all these three. at the same time, simultaneously. So when we have some idea that I am hearing in the way that the sound is out there, that space and time, I separate from the sound, it's not even real. The sound doesn't happen out there. The sight, the star isn't out there. It's happening at the eye door. It's a hole, but the actually knowing of it is happening here. Chitta, consciousness. Again, moment by moment by moment. That's why sixth sense door, moment to moment awareness is so amazing, because it's real. It's not embellished. It's not fabricated. It's not based on past knowledge. All, all consciousness is sharing. I hope that makes sense to you. It can't possibly be otherwise. And it's so beautiful. Hmm. Okay. So I've been reading a book called The Light Eaters, and the title is from one little sentence by an ethnobotanist named Timothy Plowman, an American ethnobotanist. And he said about plants, they can eat light. Isn't that enough? They can eat light. Isn't that enough? The book is called The Light Eaters. And it's by a young woman who was so sick of the whole apocalyptic direction of things and writing about it, sick of it in terms of just a despair that she wrote this book called How the Unseen World of Plant Intelligence Offers a New Understanding of Life on Earth. Zoe Schlanger. So she wrote, I'm struck by the existential conflict that the idea of a plant being able to hear has kicked up, ostensibly a conflict between science and spirituality. But I'm struck too by the realization that no one is disputing that plants can actually hear. No scientists at this point are disputing that plants can actually hear. What the plants are listening for, of course, remains to be fully determined, but it is an earth-shaking revelation on its own for someone who has spent her entire life so far operating under the assumption of the opposite. My world of sound always seemed fundamentally separate from anything plants might be involved in. But lately, my idea of what a plant is altogether is changing. They apparently intrude on all levels of our sensory world. Suddenly, the sphere in which I exist, the feeling, sharing, hearing world, seemed to be losing its fundamental separateness from the world of foliage. A wall I'd unwittingly constructed between the two was getting thinner, more transparent, like the wet membrane of a soap bubble threatening to tear. Hard green buds were poking through. I hope when we hear that, it brings about a kind of humility and and great respect, right? Great respect for all the ways that we can explore and understanding what's happening at our six sense doors, but what's happening at all beings' sensory ways of being, right? I read about this man, Itaru Sasaki, um, whose cousin died of cancer, which was in 2010 in Japan. And when he was mourning, grieving his cousin, he bought an old phone booth, a discontinued phone booth with one of the rotary phones in it, and he fixed up his garden, and he put this phone booth that wasn't connected to any wires or any earthly system, and he called this phone booth the phone of the wind, and he used this phone booth to talk to his cousin after he died. So he said, my thoughts could not be relayed over a regular phone line. I wanted my thoughts to be carried by the wind. And that it's such a, to me, it's such a deep respect for the sense door of emotion and grief, right? What a thing to do. What respect. And then this was 2010 and 2011, that tsunami and earthquake hit Japan. And so many people died. And so he carved into the phone booth, this phone is for everyone who has lost a loved one. The phone is an outlet for anyone who have messages for messages they wish to share with their friends and family. So at this point, thousands, thousands and thousands of people have come to this phone booth. And many have been built all over the world. And one takes in just that sense of it's inexplicably effective, inexplicably powerful to be grieving and go on a phone booth and talk to a being. Doesn't have to be human, right? That you love and you want to talk to, and you know the wind will carry the message. So this is a kind of respect, yeah, that's what the talk is so much about. This is a poem by William Carlos Williams, an American poet who was also a doctor. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chicken. I assume most of you know this poem. It's such a famous poem, but I'll read it again. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. I think one can miss the most important line, which is so much depends upon. There are two stores in my the town that I shop in that have completely rearranged the store. I'm 72, and that makes it very hard when everything is completely in different places because you can't find anything, right? And so it's hard to take sometimes. And I actually tend to lean toward wabi sabi, which means I really like to wear something until it really isn't presentable, even at even at home, right? Like, or I like to use things until they're really falling apart. And I've had this a bucket that I have tried to make last for years. It's plastic, and I'm from New England where the sun does not age things like in Hawaii. And I can't quite accept that things disappear so quickly that it just cracks and doesn't work anymore. And Jesse's pointed out to me that I've been trying to like make this bucket work for so long, like you can't. And I said, why are you throwing this bucket away? And he's like, you can't even pick it up. And I'm like, you can kind of make it work, but he was right. So I did go to the store to look for a bucket, which took an incredibly long time to find the bucket. And I found the most beautiful red bucket. And now I have discovered that I can't buy the size that I used to buy because I can't carry the water in it anymore. It's too heavy. So they had different sizes of red buckets, and I got the perfect size for me. And mostly I love them. You can put it out to catch rainwater, which is very, very rare in the desert, but the sound of it in the bucket filling up and the plants appreciate rainwater. They love rainwater. It's like giving them the most incredible gift you can imagine. So when I brought the red bucket home, I thought of William Carlos Williams' Red Wheelbarrow. But instead of white chickens, there are roosters. It's close, but not completely unrelated. So for the science people, that researcher, Monica Gagliano, she quoted the Nobel laureate Barbara McClintock's unusual methodology, um, which led her to a breakthrough in 1944. Now, I have heard of her, but I'm not sure you have Barbara McClintock. So in 1944, she changed the whole nature of like understanding genetics. McClintock found that some genes could jump, spontaneously changing their position in the chromosome, a previously unheard of proposition. So this is what Monica Gagliano emphasized. McClintock would observe her corn plants for hours, losing herself in the act of reverence and close listening until she felt she had a feeling for the organism and was newly capable of direct communication with it. It took years for the molecular scale technologies to arise, which proved to her colleagues that her discovery was true. Perhaps scientists should be more open to losing their grip on the rationalist certainties that sustained their careers. Now, again, what is so important here is she described it as an act of reverence. Yeah. And if we have any connection often to the indigenous way of understanding the world, Jesse and I were just in the American Southwest, right, New Mexico, and it's so deep in the culture, in the indigenous culture, that we are they were like they're born of corn mother, right? That 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 she is the mother, right? And the grandmother. It's not meant to be a metaphor. And in Hawaii, it's the taro. It's like this is it. If you're Hawaiian, you're a child of taro. It's just that's it. It's who one is. So again, this is like so important because the idea is that there's humility and reverence and such respect. It doesn't mean you don't eat it, right? If we're related and we're respectful, that's very different than jumping to the conclusion that one cannot eat or live, but that we're related and that we need to try to act in ways that are the most respectful. This morning I was walking down the street and I have a neighbor that was spraying poison all over, like all over. I kind of cover up my mouth and go by it. And it's like, I just like so painful because I know the owls just can't survive this, right? There's less owls. So the mice eat it, right? And then the owls eat the mice. And I came home and I walked up the driveway and it's like, there's there are these weed plants that have come in that they're called halekoa, but they're everywhere. And I went up to one of my favorite native Hawaiian bushes that I was looking at the flower and I was like, wow, I wanted to yell out to the guy, Hondo, come over here with your poison. Of course I don't want that, but it's just such a temptation, right? Just poison it. But we're related. So I cut it back. I make space for the things in my yard that I care about, but it's like poison. But it really doesn't look like the neighbor's yard. I mean, there's no way it can look that good if you don't poison in Hawaii anyway, or that I can imagine. And these plants, it's called ma'o. It's Hawaiian cotton. And most people don't know, but the Hawaiian cotton plant saved the cotton industry in America because they mixed it with the Hawaiian cotton, the American cotton, and it saved the cotton industry. A very interesting plant. So sometimes if you're going along in Hawaii, you have to be able to discern that there's the American cotton plant, but there's the Hawaiian cotton plant, and the flower is so beautiful. Taungpulu Sayadaw, the great teacher, the forest monk from Burma, told me to keep my mind like water, not like a rock, like water. And I had a professor in college, botany professor, environmental professor, um, that was very wonderful and unusual, a Quaker. And in his living room at home, he had a bowl that he had water in. And in the winter, he kept rocks in it. And he would change the rocks every once in a while. But whenever he walked through the living room, he would sprinkle water on the rocks so they'd be pretty and shinier um, all winter. And it taught me so much because at this time of year and where we live, it's so hot. It's so much drought, so hot that it feels like the season that's the most difficult. And the plants look miserable. It's just so hot and so dry. And so I wander my yard like Doc Brainerd, the professor, did with his rocks. I do it with trying to find a flower. And there's usually a Ma'o flower under the weeds. And today I had the bowl and put two flowers in there, and then um, the fan was on. It's so hot. And so then Jesse and I were eating breakfast, and I looked, and the flowers were going around like in the wind, like in the wind of the fan. And the ma'o is I never looked that carefully, but the sepals around the actual flower are like so light. They're like wings. And so even the lightest wind touches it and they fly around. And it felt like we went to an amusement park. And just like it was so delightful and joyful and beautiful. There has been a part of me that would just rather sleep until the election happens in the United States. No, really, I would just prefer to just go to sleep. And even no matter what, I can wake up after and whatever. But and so I'm talking about this. This talk is mainly for all of us in terms of just making sure we're giving airtime to that we're all related. All beings are related. And the importance of the respect, the humility, that we are kids, new kids on the block in terms of any kind of understanding we have of being on this planet. And how important it is to find something that can bring delight. So important amidst the suffering of it all. I have a friend that sent me a photo. She lives up in town, um, of a gecko in her house. And geckos are green, really beautiful green. And she decided to feed it some watermelon. And the watermelon is pink, so pink. And she told me about this later. She said, well, she isn't, this is Gecko George. She names her geckos, but she never tried feeding it watermelon before. And the watermelon spent hours and hours just having a feast. So happy. We don't have to um, spend a lot of time researching how to have a little joy. But it took her realizing that maybe she could be interested in this being and feed it something fun and have a little delight, right? So this is, again, just a sense of like finding the eye of the hurricane. We all can do it. The winter stars are coming, just a heads up. So if you are sleepless, which many people can be, it's also important sometimes. I haven't had a clear sky at the time that I could go out and look, but last night there was one of them not sleeping. And it's amazing. Already the winter stars are up above at 5 in the morning. Like Pleiades is up there, and the big dog, and Orion, and Jupiter, um, Saturn, Mercury, Mars. You know, it's amazing. And whenever I see that, I'll think, oh, I want to jump ahead, but I don't really want to jump ahead to winter, right? And so I remembered the last few months, if in this neck of the woods, if you see the Big Dipper and you follow the handle up, you can see the star Arcturus. It's a very important star in Hawaii, and it's an unusual star. And if you look, it shines blue. The next mind moment, it's green, and then the next. Wait a minute, do I have it right? No, it's red, then green, then blue, then gold. Very quick, very like fast. And last night when I was looking at it, I thought, oh, it's like the Morse code. I have to like spend more time with this. Yeah. What's it saying? How silly of me to have missed this my whole life. It's extraordinary. What have I been doing? It's so inspiring. I'm trying to decide whether to read the Rose Flower Journal um, from September 14th, 1856, or September 19th, 1854. September. Okay. He's speaking about the small white aster along low roads, like the turnpike, swarming with butterflies and bees. So this is September 14th, 1856. Some of them are pink. However unexpected are these later flowers. You thought that nature had just about wound up her affairs. You had seen what she could do this year and had not noticed a few weeds by the roadside or mistook them for the remains of summer flowers now hastening to their fall. You thought you knew every twig and leaf by the roadside, and nothing more was to be looked for there. And now, to your surprise, these ditches are crowded with millions of little stars. And we're related. We're their grandparents. They're our grandparents. What happened to us that we lost this knowledge, or that we don't cultivate this knowledge? Let's sit for a few minutes. Hmm. That's ma'o on your screen. It's a native Hawaiian cotton. Being save the cotton industry in America. Hmm. May we all be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. And Jesse's bowl carving class is Monday. Starts Monday.
And actually, maybe I'll make it just
Oh, right.
a little
Oh,
announcement
right.
about
Right.
the my sorry, I'm trying to find the link to it here. The day long little retreat we're gonna do in Massachusetts and Western Mass. We decided to change the date. The 12th is Yom Kippur, and I didn't think I could do it on the Sunday, but I found a way to make it work. So we're going to change it to Sunday the 13th for anyone who might want to join in Western Mass. So there's the link there. And yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle. Mm.
Have a good week.
Take care, everyone.
We'll try not to sleep too much.